Hi, my name is Vedika.
My name is Kana.
My name is Jigisha.
And my name is Bria. This video is about FDR and the New Deal.
On March 4th, 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared during his inaugural speech
that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Because of his inspiring words, many Americans felt confident that they had elected a man who was not afraid to take bold steps to solve the nation's problems.
After the stock market crash of October 1929, millions of investors were wiped out and the United States fell into what we know today as the Great Depression.
The economic depression lasted until the late 1930s. As investment and industrial output declined, failing companies fired workers, causing millions of people to become unemployed and homeless. Customers withdrew their deposits and banks became unable to make loans. The failure of banks to provide services caused Americans to distrust them. In addition, the Dust Bowl, a period of severe dust storms, greatly damaged agriculture, worsening this economic depression.
Then, in 1913, Franklin D. Roosevelt arrived at the White House with a 100-day plan. Roosevelt's goals included relief, recovery, and reform. This immediate action plan, which consisted of a series of social programs that showed how he would provide direct federal relief to the people from the Great Depression, is known as the New Deal. His plan was meant to reform American capitalism instead of replacing it with a socialist system.
American and national identity.
American identity evolved during the 30s as FDR and his presidency redefined the role of the federal government in the lives of Americans. In the 1920s, the government had traded being an active agent of change for cooperating with big business. However, as a response to the Great Depression, the United States developed into a nation with a strong central government that was capable of overcoming economic depression with improved legislation. Unlike Hoover, Roosevelt addressed problems directly. As soon as Roosevelt was inaugurated, he declared a national bank holiday and closed all banks. He called together a special session of Congress. In this time, he proposed the Emergency Banking Act, which allowed the federal government to reopen banks that were solvent and help those that were not. This action gave hope to the people that the government will directly help them out during the Depression. Perhaps most importantly, people started regarding the government as a welfare agency that was obligated to help them in times of need.
One example of this welfare in action was the Works Progress Administration, or WPA. It employed millions of people into a variety of fields. Jobs in the arts specifically celebrated American middle-class culture and made them proud to be American. However, welfare programs also led to a clash in interests between classes. The Agricultural Adjustment Act worked to rid farmers of surplus livestock, and the Federal Emergency Relief Administration provided funding for higher wages and higher employment. These acts left the upper class feeling ignored by the federal government, and they strove to show off their wealth even more, which had been relatively untouched even after the stock market crash. This led to even more tension, sometimes culminating in violence, such as the Memorial Day Massacre in Chicago. It is determination that has pulled us through time and time again from crises worse than this one.
Eleanor Roosevelt said proudly about women, "Women were faced with the responsibility of keeping their families together and would find ways to save money and food. When women entered the workforce, they were scorned for trying to take jobs away from the more deserving men. Married women were especially at a disadvantage because men were expected to be the breadwinners of the family. Despite all this, the number of women working increased because women-dominated jobs were not as impacted as the men-dominated jobs."
As had become usual in American history, African Americans suffered more than any other group. Black wages were lower than white wages, and public works projects rarely benefited them. In addition, blacks who tried to unionize found themselves targets of lynch mobs. However, when communist groups started helping blacks, the federal government jumped in, tailoring the New Deal to help African American interests as well. Moreover, black identity became grounded in a sense of community, and they helped each other through tough times by caring for each other's children and sharing family resources with other blacks.
Politics and power.
While public opinion for FDR's policies was generally positive, the New Deal was somewhat controversial. Various groups opposed the New Deal as a threat to state rights. In 1934, leaders of several major corporations joined former presidential candidate Alfred Smith and conservative Democrats to establish the American Liberty League. The American Liberty League attacked the New Deal as a threat to not only state rights but also to free enterprise and open shop. They campaigned against the New Deal's radicalism, fearing that FDR was leading the United States towards socialism, bankruptcy, and dictatorship. The League had also been gearing up for the election of 1936 by attempting to secure either uncommitted or anti-New Deal delegations to the 1936 Democratic Convention in Philadelphia. Socialists and communists also criticized the New Deal for trying to save capitalism instead of working to lessen the inequality of power.
In response to this criticism, Roosevelt made several attacks on big business in the hopes to sway voters for the approaching 1936 election. Denouncing entrenched greed and the unjust concentration of wealth and power, he proposed that government should cut the giants down to size through antitrust suits and heavy corporate taxes. The Wealth Tax Act, which helped achieve a redistribution of income by raising the income taxes of the wealthy, was one way he achieved this. While his policies favored the common people, they turned many businessmen against Democrats.
African Americans have been loyal voters of the Republican Party since the end of the Civil War. However, during FDR's presidency, large numbers of black voters, as well as other ethnic minorities, switched their loyalties to the Democratic Party. They were part of the Democratic Coalition, which included union members and white Southern farmers that elected FDR in 1936.
Work, exchange, and technology.
Poverty-stricken and often unemployed Americans called on the government for change. This change came partially in the form of the National Industrial Recovery Act, which aimed to limit production, institute industry-wide prices, and set workers' wages. However, this required a level of cooperation between business and government that many deemed idealistic, or worse, unconstitutional. For almost 2 years, government and industry worked closer than ever before. However, it all came to an end with the Supreme Court ruling of 1935, which claimed the act was an abuse of federal authority, effectively ending its term.
Also brought along by the New Deal was the building of the Norris Dam in 1936 by the Tennessee Valley Authority. Not only did it create more jobs, but it also improved agriculture in the Tennessee Valley, which had suffered during the Dust Bowl.
Another addition to the New Deal was the Social Security Act of 1935, an act still in place today. It addressed the problems surrounding social welfare by automatically collecting taxes from employees throughout their career as federal insurance. Once a person turned 65, he or she would then receive the money. Though seen as a radical move at the time, it turned out to be crucial to the life of older Americans because they now had a steady income after retirement.
Culture and society.